It's reality. First ever warp bubble has finally been created. Traveling out of this world is no longer a dream now, as the warp bubble has been created. Where will you love to go if this warp drive is possible? Now Mars and other satellites will be your next spots. How fascinating it is when you tell your family that we are going to Mars in these summer vacations. To bring this dream into reality, stick with the video as we are going to tell you how can you quench your adventurous thirst. Before deep diving into the history of the warp bubble, if you don't like the video or subscribe to the channel, do it now, as our focus is to bring the inventions to the face of the world and to celebrate their success. Be our part in this humble cause. First, we will talk about the introduction of warp drive and how it works. Excited to know? Let's get into warp drive. Also has other names such as Alcubierre drive, Alcubierre work drive, or Alcubierre metric. Is the idea to move to other planets, stars, or galaxies with more speed than light. It seems impossible some back years, as Elon Musk's effort to send people on Mars and NASA's plan to send astronauts on Mars was under process, but now this is possible as warp drives minimize the distance. After breaking the barrier of sound wave speed, the next target of great minds was to break the barrier of light speed. Now this speculation is reality by the invention of warp drive, as this is based on a wave where those waves change or transverse the fabric of space, contracting the spaces in the front direction and expanding space-time at the back. The ship will move inside a warped bubble region, and it pulls the region towards itself due to drive action. So, what will warp drive do? It will minimize the distance, as to move on Mars, a traveler had to face so many hardships and difficulties, and it must take over the span of 5 months with super fast rockets, and towards the next star it will take a time of months. But now, NASA accidentally discovered it is going to solve this issue and open new habitat opportunities. Let's talk a bit about the personality behind the discovery of mysterious light speed. Albert Einstein gives the theory of general relativity. This theory states that no one can travel faster than light speed as space and time are fused. This theory also explains how mass and energy warp space-time and how heavy objects such as stars and black holes curve space-time around them. The term gravity was then assigned a name to that curvature, and it was a nightmare for space heroes. Before discovering the warp bubble, it was a dream or fiction to travel onto stars, other planets, and galaxies. But in 1994, physicist Miguel Alcubierre brought hope for space travelers during his PhD research by doing modifications in the general relativity theory. That theory was later named warp drive theory, but there were a lot of questions, and the theory was at the stake of death because the amount of energy required to work on this contraction and expansion of space was unobtainable. Moving a little forward in the history, where Alexei Bobrick and Gianni Martinekemi came into the discovery map, and according to them, based on physical principles known as positive energy to humanity, a class of subliminal, spherically symmetric warp drive spacetimes can be constructed. They said it would be a small step toward discovering warp drive, as the ship would remain to enfold in a bubble and the crew would not sense the magnitude of the interstellar journey. With their theory, they also raised some questions such as how is it possible to build the strongest and thinner wall of bubbles than the atomic nucleus, and how to produce the negative energy, as it is a demand of warp bubble drive such as anti-gravity. So, after the arson of such questions, it seemed to be the death of warp drive, as the energy in the Einstein equation is positive, and how negative energy will be created for warp drive bubble contraction of space at the front and expansion like a donut at the back. Alcubierre was also a big fan of Star Trek, and he even wrote a letter to the famous television series and movie that inspired me to do this invention and work on it. In Star Trek, characters explore the world, move from one planet to another, discover galaxies, and meet with aliens using super fast and powerful spaceships. The central position in this movie or series is a torsion engine. It turns around the game by putting the thought in the minds of scientists that don't fly too far or fast more than the speed of light, but actually shorten the distance. This is the theory that can explain well the stretching and expanding views of space fibers. If you are a Star Trek fan, then this warp bubble drive theory is no more surprising, as one of your mates is also a big fan of Star Trek. Eric Lentz said, "It all starts from Star Trek, as in COVID times. He started working on the warp drive stuck at a point of negative energy. Eric worked on the equation in different dimensions. He analyzed space-time, modeling the multi-dimensional substance as a stack of very thin layers. He stated that in the past, there was only one linear relationship of the equation was focused. Still, he took the equation from another perspective and made a complex hyperbolic relation. With this different perspective, he designed the different shapes of warp bubble, which was very different from the Alcubierre warp bubble shape. He further mentioned there is still a need for energy and force, but we need positive energy now. There were so many questions and assumptions about his theory, and it seems like the warp bubble is stuck in the halfway journey. Then in the last year, 2021, a piece of news came up that NASA students accidentally discovered the warp bubble drive. According to reports, a team came to access the nano-microscale structure that supports the Alcubierre theory of negative energy. They also give the knowledge of warp speed, and if all the acclaimed facts are actual, the NASA students first discovered the warp drive bubble on the concept of Alcubierre. In an interview with the debrief, Dr. White said the Science and Technology magazine, "To my knowledge, this is the first paper in the peer-reviewed literature that proposes a reliable nanostructure that is predicted to manifest a real, albeit humble, warp bubble." A warp bubble is a subspace appearance phenomenon that envelops a spacecraft and distorts the spacecraft continuum to propel the spacecraft. I want to make it clear that what we discovered isn't a warp bubble analog. It's small, but we've discovered the real warp bubble, White said. Our detailed numerical analysis of our custom Casimir cavities helped us identify a real and manufacturable nano microstructure that is predicted to generate a negative vacuum energy density such that it would manifest a real nanoscale warp bubble. Not an analog, but the real thing. This recent research brought a change in design. It dramatically reduced the original concept's exotic materials and energy requirements, as they give a glimmer of hope as Star Trek fans that the warp drive derives will be possible one day. Now, this theory has a new name, Alcubierre White Warp Drive. White directed an interferometer experiment intended to assess such as impact at the nanoscale. The data was equivocal, and White highlighted that while non-zero and non-conforming effects were observed, the difference may have been generated by other factors. They are still trying to figure out that warp bubbles can develop and how much work is done to fly in spaceships. According to Dr. White, the capacity to travel at 1% speed of light would allow us to explore and colonize the whole solar system. 0.1% light speed would make exploration and colonization. It helps reach the entire star of the solar system, but data shows that boats close to the warp drive may be at risk. So now, with this, it is clear that it's possible one day to visit Mars as warp's bubble drive soon be with us. And Elon Musk's dream to start a life on Mars will be possible. Did you enjoy the video? Are you excited to travel just like a Star Trek character? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe.